So I'm going to show you a DockerPester. So since our last meetup in February, I've gotten a little bit into Docker myself. I could start to try some stuff with Docker. Especially I was interested in using Linux, PowerShell on Linux, for example. And in that journey, I actually wrote a module, and I want to show it to you guys today. So what we're going to look at today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Docker itself, so the technology. I'm going to talk about Pester. I guess most of you know Pester and Docker as well. I'm going to show you what DockerPester is, and I'm going to give you a little demo. So first off, Docker. So Docker is a containerization software, basically. So what's the difference between Docker containers and virtual machines? Also, a quick disclaimer, I'm by no means an expert in Docker, so if anything is wrong, you can correct me, or just take everything I say about Docker with a grain of salt here. So the main difference between Docker and virtual machines is that Docker containers don't use a hypervisor, basically. So as we see on the left here, traditionally virtual machines run on a host operating system using a hypervisor. The hypervisor providing access to the resources of the host operating system for the guest OSs that we call our virtual machines here. On Docker, this whole process works a little bit different. So the hypervisor is usually like a built-in feature. For Windows, it would be Hyper-V. For Linux, I think it's KVM. Or you can also install apps like VirtualBox, for example, or VMware on your machines to fill in that hypervisor role. For Docker, this is just a service called the Docker daemon. So the hypervisor then passes these resources to the virtual machines on Docker. This is basically just the Docker service that passes it to so-called Docker images. That's what I've written here. So with Docker, we don't have virtual machines, but we have Docker images instead. So our main advantage actually for this is that we use less space, we use less power of our OS, and we can boot up Docker containers in milliseconds versus virtual machines that take up to seconds or even minutes to boot up, basically. So in my case, for DockerPester, the main takeaway basically is I want to use containers. I want to execute code on different OSs on my local computer, and I basically just want to throw away computers. I'll talk about that more later. So just to show you Docker. So where do you get these images? There's this website called Docker Hub, and this is a so-called Docker registry. So registry is like a repository where you find all these different Docker images. So in here we can also search for PowerShell, for example. So the PowerShell team from Microsoft has created some Docker images that you can download here and use. There are actually quite a lot. So here you see Nano Server, Windows Nano Server with PowerShell RC3 from version 7. Various different Windows images here with PowerShell on them. And also here you see you have Linux images that have PowerShell pre-installed. So you can download these images here using Docker pull, and then passing on the account from Docker Hub, and at last you have to add the tag. So the tag being the name of the image in the end here. Yeah, so as we see, we have lots of Linux images also that we can use and download to test or to use actually. Yeah. So I created like a little demo for Docker that you can try it at home basically if you want. So just to let you see like how Docker performs like on my machine, for example. So Docker PS. To run Docker commands, you just always use the Docker CLI here. It's in my path environment variable here. So Docker PS will show you all active containers. Then Docker PS -A will show you all containers, also the ones that are not active at the moment. So active doesn't mean running. Basically, there's two different states. So in Docker PS, you see like the Docker containers that are running and the Docker containers that are stopped. But you can actually exit a container completely, but still have it in the background. So with this command, you would see all of these. So as you see at the moment, we don't have any container running, or also exited actually. So just make sure to use the correct Docker context here, and just start a Docker container. So what I'm doing here, I'm using Docker run. So this is the command to start a Docker container. It's meaning that that I want to enter the container directly. So here you see, if I check if we're in Linux, it gives us true. So we're in the container right now in PowerShell. The --rm meaning that we want to remove the container completely as soon as we exit it. And here in the end, I passed the image I want to use. So here we see I took a PowerShell image from Microsoft here. The image being from Alpine Linux using the PowerShell 7 version 7 RC2. So here I can do anything. I can do with PowerShell Linux basically. I can do all these commands. Once I exit it, if we go and check, no container anymore. So that container due to this --rm got removed as soon as we exited it. So what if you want to start a container and you want to have it persist, like you don't want that it leaves as soon as you exit it. What you do is you start it detached, and you leave the --rm away. So I ran that. The Docker container started. So if I do DockerPS, I now see my container here. So it actually has a name. I did that. I can access it afterwards. So now what we can do with this container, since I added -t, which binds like a terminal to your container, so I can execute commands now against my container. So if I do docker exec, then the name I defined here with the name parameter, and then I add PowerShell, so pvsh, like the name of the exit there, and -c just simply meaning the command. I do get process. So if I run that against our running container, it just gives me back the output of the command that I just ran against the container exactly. So if I want to remove that container, I first do docker stop. Then you will still see it in the DockerPS. DockerPS -a. You see status is exited. If I want to remove it completely, I do docker container prune, and it's gone. So if I check again, we don't have a container anymore. So the same thing I can also do with Windows containers on my Mac. So a special thing is on my Mac, like Mac doesn't support Docker containers for Windows. So I actually set up a Vagrant, like with a Vagrant, I set up a virtual machine that runs Windows, where these containers run afterwards. So I switch the context to that virtual machine, and I can start a Windows container as well. So this takes a little longer since Windows is a bit heavier than Linux, but it already ran. So we are now actually in our Windows container, but with CMD. So this is not PowerShell, this is CMD. So type PowerShell. This will get us into PowerShell. So again, here I added the --rm option to remove the container when I exit it. But basically, same thing here. If I run the container detached, I afterwards can execute PowerShell commands against the container. Well, so I see the output of get process. Cool. So that out of the way. That's kind of how I played around with Docker for a while, using different OSs. Yeah, so then I actually got curious to see whether I can leverage this experience that I had with containers to my advantage. So I guess you guys all know Pester. So Pester is the PowerShell testing framework. It's actually DSL meta language in PowerShell where you can write tests to test your code. It's often used to find out like how well your code is. You can also find out how well your code is tested. So DockerPester is actually open source project now owned by Microsoft. Also standardly shipped in Windows, so Pester should be on your Windows machine. This is the GitHub repo, and as an example for you guys, so this is another open source module of mine. So in the code here, I have a folder with tests, and here I have written my Pester test for that code. So basically what I do here, I can invoke Pester and I give it a pass. So this would be /tests, and it will start running my Pester tests. I'm using a Mac right now, so I'm testing my code on a Mac. So it's running all these tests in this folder here. So the idea I had with for DockerPester was basically to use Docker images to test my code. So any project I have on my laptop, to test it cross-platform without having to use like app layer or any other CI like Azure DevOps or so. So what I did, just have to find the PowerPoint again. Here it is. So basically what I did, what is DockerPester? DockerPester is a framework to run Pester tests of your project in containers. So it's basically local CI. It enables you to run your tests, the tests for your project cross-platform on your machine. So it's actually already demo time. So just to show you, quickly how the module works. So I'm gonna import the module here. I'm just gonna check that no containers here. Yeah. And what like most basic example I can give you is to invoke DockerPester against that same project I showed you, PS Harmonize. That's actually this module here. So to run my Pester tests on Alpine Linux, I can just I can run invoke DockerPester. I pass on an image. So which image do I want to run it on? And I pass where is my project located. So if I run this, it will start here. It will you have kind of like a nice output here, like a nice verbosity. See what it's doing. So currently it's installing Pester on the container. And after it's installed Pester on the container, it will start to run that the Pester test. Here we go. So the Pester tests are starting actually. Then another one issue I faced with this module. So there we go. That was the Pester run. One issue I faced with this module is this is cool. Like I can look at the output from my Pester run. But what we usually use, like in CI, for example, so in continuous integration, is the pass-through object of Pester, right? So the pass-through object of Pester, if I run Pester with dash pass-through, I'll get an object back with all the test results in it. So I'll see how many tests have failed, which exact test has failed with what error, and that kind of stuff. And that's basically the interesting part, right? So this line here is basically just running the same test on a Windows container. I won't run that because it will take a while. But what I'm going to show you is you can actually invoke DockerPester. You can save the output to a variable, and in the end you will get your pass-through object back. So we'll just run that again. So the way how it works is I run the Pester test on the container. After I run the Pester test, I export my output from the pass-through object on the container to JSON and save it to a file, and I'll copy that file back to my to the Docker host, so to my MacBook actually, and I'll just do a convert from JSON from there, and I have my pass-through object. So if I check on the result now. Oops, look. Oh, it is empty. Okay, it actually didn't work. Demo effect.
Did you forget adding?
Who doesn't know it?
Did you forget adding pass-through?
No, this should actually be implied in the function.
Ah, okay.
It would actually be implied in the function, but so $s pass through. No, it's empty. So I'll just go on to the next demo actually then, just to save some time. So what you also can do is you can do project runs. That's just what I called it. So where this gets interesting is you can actually set up one of your project on your laptop. So if I do get docker typo get DockerPester project. Yeah, so it's not existing yet. If you want to set up like multiple image runs for the project and just run it like with passing the name of your project, you can use @DockerPester project with a set of parameters. So you have to specify the input folders. That's where your project lies on your computer. You have to specify the image for each task. So here in the first task here, I use a Windows image. In the second task here, I use a Linux image. And you actually have to specify the context. So that's on your MacBook. On your Windows machines, you won't have to do that. It will you actually only have to pass the executor. So the executor here is telling me what OS is your image. So is it Windows or is it Linux? So for on your Windows machine, instead of switching the context here, it will just switch like your daemon. So on Docker for Windows, you have to switch your daemon if you want to run Linux containers, which this model does automatically. So if we added that. So now we do, let's clear the output here. If we now do get Docker project my name PS harmonize, we see these jobs got added. So now what we can do every time basically we can run invoke DockerPester with the parameter -project PS harmonize, and it will start to run your jobs that you predefined here. So first it will go to the Windows image here. So we set up a Windows container here. On Windows, we also have to install like the newest NuGet provider to install Pester here. Also, specialty on Windows is you have to shut down your containers. So this is actually only necessary on if you're using DockerPester on Windows. So on Windows, Docker uses Hyper-V, and Hyper-V cannot copy files to running containers. So you have to. So here I actually shut down my container, copy the file on it, and then power it up again. Exactly. So now it's starting Pester again. Now it's going to start the Pester tests. So we're just quickly going to let this run through. So yeah, like while this is running, I'll just show you the project on GitHub basically. So you'll find it under my GitHub account. It's called DockerPester. As you see, I set up a pipeline to actually test multiple images from the PowerShell Docker up account. So here are a few Linux images that I test. So each time I update my codes, it actually tests all these images if it works for those. And also here you will find like some documentation on how to use it. Maybe also interesting here you see like the pipeline. So it basically just takes a Linux machine. This is an Ubuntu machine here. It installs Docker on it, and then it runs the tests. And it does that for each image I defined. Yeah, so we're finished here. Let's go. So once you finish this, you can use, it actually says it here in the output, you can use this command here, so get latest DockerPester results, project PS harmonize. If I do that, I get my 2 pass-through objects back. So this is actually an array of objects you get back here. In $s, if we go to the first instance of this array, we see the image here was Alpine. We can enter the pass-through object here. Okay, this is empty. I don't know why it's empty. That's a bug, I guess. But this one seemed to work. Okay, so let's look at the pass-through object of this one. So right now in the second instance of that array here, we're in the Windows image. So if we look at the pass-through object here, we see pass count. So all 479 tests passed, and I can look at my test result in that pass-through object here. Yeah, so excuse the bug, I guess. But this worked this afternoon. I have to check it out. But that's the project, yeah.